Holy smokes, things are getting really severe in Russia. Not only is the Russian ruble absolutely collapsing, the value of the ruble now lower than where it was when Russia first invaded Ukraine, but Vladimir Putin is now threatening to ramp up production of a brand new missile, a hypersonic Mach 10 plus missile capable of delivering nuclear warheads to Ukraine, because he wants to escalate and grab as much land as possible before Donald Trump takes office. This is not good. And in this video, I'm going to break down exactly what's going on. We're going to start with the Russian economy. Then I'm going to talk to you about what's going on with these new missiles, the latest between North Korea's involvement with Russia, what's going on in the Russian territory that Ukraine is trying to grab, Russian territory, a territorial grab of Ukraine, what Donald Trump's envoy is saying about how they want to resolve this conflict as soon as possible, and what the Biden administration is doing. Spoiler alert, the Biden administration is throwing lots and lots of money at Ukraine. And this is also ramping up right before Donald Trump takes office. Let's get into it. First, quick note, we have a new Trumponomics course that is on pre-sale. Check it out. It's only $2.99. It's a smoking hot deal because it covers everything. Trade alerts, wealth building strategies, real estate deal analysis, tax strategies under Trump. Everything that Trump does in 2025, we are going to break down and update into this course to help you make money. And if you could save just a little bit in your tax strategies, you will pay multiple times over in savings. You will earn multiple times over in savings by buying this course. So check it out over at meetkevin.com. I'm so excited to launch this course. It is a brand new course on pre-sale launching December 17th. Well, speaking about launching, I'll tell you the one thing that's not launching right now is the Russian economy. The Russian ruble not only is collapsing to the levels that we have not seen since the invasion, a 32-month low, but Russia's central bank is freaking out. They are trying to intervene to stabilize the Russian ruble. Vladimir Putin says, don't worry, this is just a seasonal fluctuation, even though this is the lowest we've been in 32 months. And Vladimir Putin says, don't panic, it's okay, the central bank will handle. Well, it doesn't appear to really be working. And a lot of folks think that right now, this is happening because of a few reasons. Number one, U.S. sanctions might actually finally be starting to bite against Russia. 1/3 of the Russian ruble is now gone. 1/3 of its value has evaporated in just the last 90 days. And you've got some serious economic problems within Russia itself. Because so many workers from the civilian economy are being moved from the civilian economy to the military, where the military is offering higher pay, attracting people out of the civilian economy, what you're finding is you've created a wage price spiral for civilian jobs in Russia, and it's leading to substantial inflation. Now, one of the reasons the military, this is what some people say, it's kind of sad, but some people say one of the reasons the military can offer more pay is because they don't have to end up paying you for long. Let that sink in. Wages, though, in the civilian sector are up 8.4% in Russia. That's inflation adjusted. And yields on savings accounts are 21% because, quite frankly, inflation is so high, not because the economy is imperfect. Apparently, according to Russia, the unemployment rate is only 2.3%. But rather because there is such a whacked up supply and demand dynamic that you actually have extremely low unemployment, but extremely high inflation. That's because so much effort is being moved to the military, and it's really starting to affect things like IT, local services like construction, or even people working for the local police force. Apparently, there are as many as 9 job openings per unemployed person in Russia. So if you're looking for a job and you can't find one, plenty of jobs available in Russia. Problem is they might drag you out of there and throw you into the military, exacerbating the problem. But understand this, part of the reason the Russian ruble might be collapsing is not just because of the sanctions. It's not just because oil is falling or sanctions on Gazprom Bank or potentially the fact that, as oil falls, a large source of Russian income is falling, leading to potentially more destabilization in Russia, but also the potential that this high inflation and ultra low unemployment might lead to a collapse of productivity, a collapse of gross domestic product, and ultimately stagflation. Now, keep this in mind. Russian GDP is already about 3.9% of global production and output. This means that a collapse of the Russian economy could drag down other economies that are already suffering. Think Middle Eastern countries like Turkey, think China in Asia. And when they get hammered, they might end up being less capable of trading with the United States and therefore affecting the U.S. economy. Everything is connected. And so when you have over 9% inflation in Russia on an annualized basis, which people think honestly is probably closer to 18+%, and you end up having wages spiraling out of control at an 8 to 9% inflation adjusted clip, which again probably aligns with about 18% non-inflation adjusted, you're creating really large economic problems. And this is leading to a flight of assets out of Russia. The Russian stock market is suffering, down 20% so far this year. The Russian ruble is collapsing. This is going to make it harder for Russia's economy to actually finance itself, which frankly is part of the goal, the strategic goal of NATO and the United States now is if you hurt their economy, maybe you could end the war in Ukraine, which Putin says he's open to discussing, but then again, Joe Biden and the Biden administration have banned any talks with Putin, so you can't really negotiate a resolution. Who knows why, but let's get into some of the other facts that are going on right now. When you have the economic pain that you have in Russia now, problem is stimulative efforts like money printing by the Russian central bank might do nothing more than create more inflation. And that's because there just aren't enough people to actually take jobs. So if you are able to increase supply, you just end up causing more deflation and stagnation. If you are trying to hire people because you're a business and you have more money, there just aren't more people created. You can't print people. So you have a really big problem in Russia, and it comes at the same time as Vladimir Putin is ramping up strikes against Ukraine, potentially now focusing decision-making centers like military outposts in Kiev, also ramping up to take as much land control as possible, likely before negotiations begin with Donald Trump. This is probably so that Putin can play this sort of 4D chess move where he sort of ramps up to pull back when he negotiates with Trump. It's kind of a strategic way to get as much as you can out of a negotiation, go really extreme right before the negotiation. Anyway, Russia has also been picking up its attacks against the against the Ukrainian energy sector, with apparently now as many as 1 million people without power. Zelensky calls this a vile escalation. Zelensky's complaining about Russia using cluster munitions, which are illegal according to the Geneva Conventions. And now Russia is striking deeper and deeper into multiple cities, almost purposefully trying to shut down power and heating during winter. This is really a form of psychological warfare following actual physical warfare. Now, what we found is that you've got Ukrainian air forces doing their best to take down Russian missiles and drones, but their strength against taking down these mostly Iranian-made Shahed drones isn't that good. They have a success ratio of taking down these drones at only about 30 to 40%. They're causing a lot of problems in Ukraine, and they're enabling Russia to slowly creep up on the battlefield and take more land before these potential negotiations. I want you to see what's going on with land control. This was before the invasion on the left. On the right, this was after the initial advance. Now, Ukraine did a great job at pushing back Russia's initial attack. But we have been stuck in this sort of November 2022 map for about 2 years. And Russia has actually slowly been moving forward, very slowly, making very, very little inroads along these. You can kind of see a little bit of a jut out over here. So some inroads being made, but Russia still controls over 17% of land that has previously been claimed by Ukraine. a lot of folks believe that Russia is trying to solidify this land grab. So that way, if Donald Trump forces some form of negotiated settlement, Russia could just take control of this land, specifically that valuable land around the Dnipro region and river, because that, after all, is where 90% of Ukraine's energy production is, which is really desirable for Russia. They want that oil and natural gas production. Now, something else to keep in mind is that, yes, you do have Ukraine encroaching on the Kursk region of Russia, but they've recently lost as much as 40% of the land that they've taken, partly because North Korean soldiers are now fighting in Russia to support the Russians against Ukrainians. Ukraine at one point controlled 531 square miles in the Kursk region. Now, according to Ukraine, down to just about 309 square miles, which means Ukraine's push into Kursk is getting squeezed, while at the same time Russia keeps pushing deeper and deeper and using these longer-range missiles to fight back against Ukraine's ACAT missiles, now authorized by the United States. And this is exactly why landmines are now being authorized by the United States to Ukraine to, again, try to prevent that push forward of Russia. All of this happening before the Trump approach. Now, what's going on with Trump? Well, remember, every time I mention Trump, the number one thing I want you to think about is how I've literally created a course brand new at meetkevin.com to help you get through the Trump administration, but not get through it. Build your wealth. I don't care if you're a Democrat or you're a Republican. I want you to build your wealth, and I'm going to give you everything that you should be thinking about. Look, I'm a licensed financial advisor, and I'm not giving you personalized financial advice in these courses, but I'm taking all my experience as an advisor, and I'm helping you understand the most common pitfalls that people have when it comes to stocks, options, diversification, hedging, real estate, long-term investing, building your wealth, and this is the most critical one, tax strategies. So go to meetkevin.com to check this out. But Trump does, especially since we're on Black Friday sale and prices are going to be going up soon, Donald Trump promises quick peace negotiations. This is because Donald Trump's envoy suggests that there's probably going to be a ceding of land to Russia. This is the opposite of what Joe Biden has encouraged, which is do not give up any land. However, one of the ways that they could accomplish this is potentially negotiating directly with Kim Jong-un, North Korea. This is something that Joe Biden has been vastly opposed to, but that Donald Trump is open to doing, negotiating directly with Putin or Kim Jong-un to try to resolve these problems, frankly, but also potentially forcing Ukraine into giving up land by suggesting that the United States will only continue to arm Ukraine if a ceasefire occurs and a land division occurs. At the same time this is happening, Iran and Russia are deepening their alliances, but the Trump administration thinks that they might actually be able to negotiate independently with Russia and Russia and Iran, because Iran and Russia actually have competing interests. Think about it. They have different strategies in the Middle East. They compete as oil producers and sellers. And so if the Trump administration can negotiate independent deals with North Korea, Iran, and Russia, the United States could potentially strengthen their positioning with all of these various different countries, especially since right now what's happening is you're actually strengthening relationships between Iran, building drone facilities in Ukraine, between Iran and Russia, obviously, between Russia and China, where China is ramping up their manufacturing of shells and munitions quietly. They say they don't. They say they only provide chips and non-lethal hardware, but most people think that's BS. North Korea is now getting battlefield experience and ramping up their production of military equipment as well, which is something they hadn't been doing when they were not involved in military conflicts. Now they literally have a training ground against Ukraine, and Ukraine's being funded by the U.S., so you're basically training the North Koreans with their funding. There's a lot of things going on here. But what you really have is a militarizing world, and it's scary. Now, Vladimir Putin this morning did suggest that if Ukraine becomes a nuclear power, and this is a big threat, if Ukraine becomes a nuclear power, Russia will use all means of destruction. Ukraine cannot make a nuclear weapon. They could probably only have the capability of creating a dirty bomb, but Russia will respond to any threat accordingly, and that today anything is possible. Vladimir Putin also compliments Trump, suggesting that he is an intelligent politician, and don't worry about the ruble or the Russian economy. Everything is under control, says Vladimir Putin. So how do we put all of the pieces of this puzzle together, knowing that tomorrow is Black Friday and we currently have the Trump $2.99 sale going on for that Trump course? So on pre-sale, all that content comes out December 17th. Well, here's how I would put it all together. I would say that number one, we're probably seeing a ramp up by both Ukraine and Russia before the Trump inauguration. That is more pressure via ACAT missiles, those shorter range but longer range missiles than Ukraine has had access to before. Seeing that same ramp up against the energy infrastructure by Russia and that pushing of Ukraine out of the Kursk region. We're seeing this escalation of talking in action before January because we expect negotiations to begin when Donald Trump takes office. These negotiations could end the war, and I think both sides are trying to get to a place where they have the best strategic advantage for those negotiations, so they're ramping up. Try to prevent the Russian advance with landmines, try to get into Russia deeper, and vice versa, get into Ukraine deeper and hit more energy infrastructure in Ukraine. At the same time, the Russian economy is having serious problems. So there is a big incentive for Russia to end this war so people who are deployed in the military can actually get back to jobs and maybe they can stabilize their economy, which is important for the entire global economy. This is why it's so important to pay attention to this. You've got stagflation in Russia, mostly because you have a lack of workers. If you could get back to a normalized pre-war economy, you'd have less problems here and potentially more global stability. It's really in the best interest of everyone to see this war end. Especially when it does end, you might actually see oil prices fall and therefore gas prices fall, which could boost consumer spending in the United States, giving you more dollar dollars to check out that Black Friday sale at meetkevin.com. So, what do we know about the potential for escalation between now and then? Well, we know it's very high. Things could get worse before they get better. And so we've still got somewhere around 54 days before the inauguration. So we've got quite a bit of waiting to do between now and then, and a lot can happen. And with this now mass production of these nuclear-capable missiles that Putin is undertaking, we got to be careful because these hypersonic missiles could create a lot of damage for Ukraine between now and the inauguration and really put Ukraine on the back seat, which may escalate tensions between the United States and Russia under the Biden administration until then. Anyway, this is a full summary of what's going on. Thank you so much for watching. I'm going to go make some more Tim Hortons coffee. Shout out to you Canadians, eh? And we'll see you in the next one. Goodbye. Good luck. Check out meetkevin.com.
Why not advertise these things that you told us here? I feel like nobody else knows about this.
We'll try a little advertising and see how it goes.
Congratulations, man. You have done so much. People love you. People look up to you.
Kevin Paffrath there, financial analyst and YouTuber. Meet Kevin. Always great to get your take.